one thing that really led to my success as a real estate investor and as a real estate agent. It really was what allowed me to step in from being like self-employed, stuck in the day-to-day trading hours for dollars, and step into being a business owner, both as an investor and when I was an active real estate agent. It let me step out of the day-to-day operations, and leveraging virtual assistants is hands down what allows me to now travel the world with my family. So that is why I'm so excited to share this with you today. I'm really hopeful for the difference it'll make for all of you. And to give you an idea, so here's a picture of me and my daughter from a couple weeks ago, and that is Mount Fuji in the background behind us there, because we've been able to spend 2 months here in Japan as a part of a 5-month experience here in Asia. And that is entirely due to me getting out of the day-to-day and leveraging virtual assistants in the business. So are you in the right place? Is this for you? Well, first, it's the right place for you if you know that DIY isn't the only option. I started with DIY, very much so. I started with self-managing all my properties. I started with, doing the work on them myself. I remember a condo when there was a turnover between tenants, it was just up the road from me because they had to be because I was self-managing. And I remember coordinating that I was going to pay a friend to help me paint this condo. And I went, my daughter, who's now 9, was like a little baby. I took the pack and play so she could be in that and nap while I painted this condo with a friend of mine. So if you started with DIY, I get it. It's just, you got to know that DIY isn't the only option and be ready to move on. Understanding what got you here as an investor isn't going to get you there, right? I would not be living the life I was right now if I kept DIYing, kept painting those condos between turnovers, right? I wouldn't have been able to get as much doors, as much income, or have the freedom to now live anywhere and manage those properties. And you're in the right place if you are ready to build a better real estate investing business. If you're ready to treat it like a business and run it well, let's dive in. And why can I help? Who am I? For those of you who don't already know me, so my name is Adrienne Green, and I am a real estate investor who is using virtual assistants in my investing business. I also, with VAs, was able to really transform as a former real estate agent. So I was a solo real estate agent. I became an agent after I was an investor. Thanks to using virtual assistants, went from being a solo real estate agent to having a whole team of agents that worked for me and with me. And that was thanks to that very first hire I made as an executive assistant, virtual assistant who came in, did all my operations. And that's what allowed my business to grow to the point where I could start a team. And I, in fall of 2023, sold that real estate team. That had become a business asset that I could sell for money. And that's what I did in fall of 2023 before I started traveling full time. I also run a virtual staffing agency with my husband. We started this after seeing the difference that virtual assistants made in my world. And so we now love helping other entrepreneurs with virtual assistants. Now, I have found that real estate investors prefer to do it a little more DIY. They don't love using the staffing agencies. And that's why I'm excited to share a lot of my wisdom from my experience and from seeing behind the curtain with other entrepreneurs and business owners, and share in our next hour call together a lot of what I do now. And like I said before, because I use virtual assistants, I'm able to travel the world full time while I'm doing all this, while I'm an investor, while I have my own business, everything like that. And what I would love is if you could tell the rest of us about your real estate investing journey so far. What's working? What's weighing you down? Go ahead and drop that in the chat. And that way I can make sure that I hit on your specific issues as we go through this. Okay? If anybody wants to come off mute and share in person, they can. Otherwise, go ahead and drop in the chat. What's your biggest question? Or tell us about your real estate investing journey so far. What's working? What's weighing you down? Lack of systems. Yes, we're going to talk about how do the systems market and property analysis. Yeah, that can take a lot of time. I get that. And those are things where you don't have to do it. The virtual assistant can totally help you do it for sure. Now, as we dive into this, sometimes people come in and they say everything is all rosy and sunshines, and the truth is, it isn't, right? Things are hard work. And the truth about leveraging virtual assistants is that leadership is tough, right? That leadership is tough. And then when you put that person that you're leading and you put them on the other side of the world so that you have to do leadership remotely, it's even tougher. All right. Like that's the truth. The thing is, no one has 100% success. And yet, I love baseball. I think it's a great sport. I love to watch it. Nobody has 100% batting average, right? But we still get up, we still go bat because it's still the only way to score runs. And so the truth is, even though you might struck out, even though you will probably have a hiring fail if you hire enough people, it is the way. It is the way to go from being self-employed, from trading hours for dollars, for needing to work for every dollar you make. It is the way to go from that and to get to the point where you are a business owner, right? Where you have employees like virtual assistants and you are making money off the time they're spending in your business instead of the time you're spending in your business. It is the way to grow. And you just need to go into it with the expectation that you are going to need to learn. You're going to need to get out of your comfort zone. And not every hire is going to be a home run, just like every at bat isn't a home run. Now, if that works for you and you're willing to understand that it's going to have its ups and downs, and yet overall the path is going to be positive, then let's show you what you can do. So my real estate investing business, I wanted to walk you through first what my virtual assistants do and what I do, and to give you an idea of the difference this can make. So my real estate investing business, first off, I have long-term rentals, I have short-term rentals, and I have private money lending. And managing all three of those, I typically spend in a given week between 1 and 5 hours in my real estate investing business. The virtual assistants do everything else. So let's go through this table and I'll show you what exactly I do and what exactly they do. So my virtual assistants are doing daily, weekly, monthly accounting and bookkeeping. And what I'm doing is I'm reviewing and the financials and accounting, typically monthly, and I'm asking about anything unusual. I'm not inputting anything into QuickBooks. I'm not like attaching any receipts. I'm not categorizing anything. I am just pulling the reports, going into my accounts and checking things. Next, my virtual assistants are the ones who are paying the bills. They're submitting all the accommodations tax forms. They're renewing the licenses and LLCs. Pretty much if it has to do with like account, legal, all of that, they're doing it. One thing I do have to do is sometimes we get those contractors who require being paid by check, right? They don't take any kind of electronic payment. That does require me logging into my bank and mailing a check, because that's one thing we don't have the VAs do, is the ability to send checks. Next, my virtual assistants order the supplies, furnishings, and needed items. So for my long-term rentals, short-term rentals, if we need anything like that, they're handling it. And what I'm doing is okaying big purchases. So as a specific example of this, over the winter, we needed a new couch in one of my short-term rentals. So my virtual assistant did the research, found a few great options, showed them to me. And because this was a purchase like over $1,000, that was one where I chose the one I wanted, okayed it. They coordinated its delivery, its assembly by a handyman, and the removal of the old couch. Amrita, the way they're doing bookkeeping is in QuickBooks. QuickBooks is set up with the ability to create an account for an accountant or for a bookkeeper where they're not able to, I mean, even in QuickBooks anyway, you're not able to address or change anything. So all of the transactions are automatically pulled into QuickBooks, and then they are categorizing them there. The one thing that I do also pull, a good point that I need to put on this, is for the monthly reconciliation, I do need to log into like my credit cards and pull those statements and give them to them so they can do the monthly reconciliation. But really, a lot of business bank accounts, like I use Relay as my business bank account, it has an option for like an accountant or limited user to be in there. So my virtual assistant can log into my business bank account and he can see the transactions and everything like that without being able to send money. And a lot of business bank accounts do have that. But the credit cards are the ones that really don't. And that's where I have to log in and do it to get those statements. And then next on the list, my virtual assistant handles communication. So phone communication, we use a open phone, VoIP phone number. It is one phone number that both they and I can answer. And then platforms, like for my short-term rentals in Hospitable specifically, whatever you're using for that, virtual assistant could go in and handle guest communication there, and then any email as well. And then what I do is, I don't have enough short-term rentals to merit 24/7 coverage by a virtual assistant. So I respond to urgent messages when my VAs are off and not working. Next, coordinating routine care and maintenance. So on all my properties, if we need a handyman visit, we get the HVAC checked twice a year. If there's repairs that are needed, my virtual assistant handles all of that. We have the contacts in Google Drive. If for whatever reason we don't have the right service provider, they're in charge of researching and finding service providers and calling them, and then coordinating everything from there on out. What I do is I okay big repairs and large expenditures. That's pretty much when I get involved. The virtual assistant also posts and replies on social media accounts. So we have social media accounts for my short-term rental properties. We may also have some stuff like that for private money lending in the future. And the virtual assistant handles all the routine posts and responses to messages on that. What I do is I give ideas for social media strategy and for posts. I kind of give some big picture guidance or wisdom or inspiration, and they take it and run with it and make it happen. My virtual assistants handle all the routine marketing along those lines, and I focus my time then on one-on-one networking, right? I'm not having to spend all the time editing videos and making these posts, so I have more time to do virtual coffees or to meet with people one-on-one. And then for the private money lending, I wanted to include a little about that. My virtual assistant can handle all the loan application processing, all the monthly statements, all the routine checking of boxes. And what I handle is reviewing and approving those loan applications. If anybody has any other questions, like Amrita did, go ahead and pop them in the chat. And what I would love, I walked through a lot of chats or a lot of tasks here. I would love to hear which of these tasks would you hand off tomorrow if the right help showed up? What would you hand off? What would make a big difference for you? A lot of people like the idea of handing off bookkeeping and accounting because the truth is most people are behind. But what would you be interested in? Because I can speak directly to that as we go forward. All right. Well, we'll move on. And I want you to keep in mind a really important mindset shift. Oh, we just got a few messages here. Accounting, receipt collection, waivers, W-9s. Oh, yes, they can do all of that. And then Michelle asked, do I use open phone for my virtual assistant to communicate with cleaners and handyman? Yes. Yes, we do. So I'll talk about it a little more later on, but pretty much an open phone. I have I think a property management phone number, and I like open phone versus some other services like Google Voice. You'll hear I love Google Workspace, but I don't love Google Voice because it's very difficult on Google Voice to share a phone number between multiple accounts because they link your Google Voice phone number to your Google account. And so Open Phone is different in that way where it's very easy to share it. Plus, overall, it's a very robust system. So I've been really happy with Open Phone pretty much since I switched to it a couple years ago. It's been a while. It's been a while, and I've been happy with it that whole time. Okay, now I want you to keep in mind that an important phrase that I think really helps people is to remember that you don't need to do it all. You just need to make sure that it all gets done. You don't need to do it all. You just need to make sure that it all gets done. And I'm going to break down and we're going to walk through today what I would consider the key aspects of being successful in leveraging a virtual assistant. The first is mindset. And it sounds simple, and yet it's what trips a lot of people up. So we're going to dive into that and talk about how you can be successful there. Determining the role. People get totally overwhelmed or make missteps there. I'm going to give you some really easy ways to do that well. Hiring well. Another thing people are really afraid of, getting the wrong hire. And yes, like I said, not everyone's going to be a home run, but we can really get your batting average a lot higher than it would be otherwise. Getting the tech stack. I love having the right tech in place. I've spent a lot of time figuring out what the right tech is, and I'm excited to share some of that with you. And then setting up the systems. As someone mentioned at the top, right, it can be totally overwhelming to not have the systems in place. I want to break down for you how you can easily set up the most important systems so that you can get started right away and it's easy, success, all the right things. Okay. Now, mindset. I want you to think about as I go through this, if you had 10 extra hours next week, what would you finally get to do? Because it's really important with mindset to think about what we're going to get opened up to instead of worrying about what we might lose, right? If you had 10 extra hours next week, what would you finally get to do? So the biggest mistakes I see people handling with mindset, and I'm going to present each mistake as a delegation detour, and then I'm going to walk through the really easy fixes to make sure you don't get stuck on that detour. So the first delegation detour in terms of mindset is not handing off tasks. You might read this or hear me say this and be like, why would somebody pay for a virtual assistant and then not hand off the tasks? I've seen it happen a lot with our virtual staffing business. People will bring on a virtual assistant. They'll pay for them for months, and the virtual assistant is like, hey, what can I do? Hey, what can I do? I'm here to help. And the person never meets with them and they never give them anything to do. And there's no logical reason to do that. And that's why I'm telling you it's a mindset issue, right? It's a mindset issue where it's keeping you from handing off the tasks to them. And there's some fixes to make it easy to get started. The first is to start small and easy. All right. Kind of like the tiny habits. If you guys have read the book or into that tiny habits idea, right? Start small and easy. And that's why, because this is a really foundational issue that I see a lot. That's why when you registered for this class, I gave you the 10 tasks to hand off in week one, right? So you could start thinking about those really easy things where you wouldn't have to make a big procedure or anything, where somebody could use some common sense and help get some stuff off your plate. The next thing that can help is if you commit to handing off one task per week. If you have that goal of I'm going to hand off one task per week, that can break down the overwhelm of, oh my gosh, I need to give this person 40 hours a week of work, and instead just be like, nope, I'm going to hand off one task per week. And if you think, if you think about a task that you do every week, and maybe it takes you an hour a week, right? Maybe it's your bookkeeping and accounting. Maybe it's some social media stuff, right? Maybe it's some other operations admin stuff. If you can give them one hourly task in 1 week, you've just given yourself back 52 hours this year. And then next week, you do another 1 hour task. Well, now you've given yourself 104 hours back in this year alone. And it really does add up quickly. And so it can be really powerful. I don't want you to get overwhelmed that you have to give them everything. Focus on one task per week. And another thing, and really this little tiny thing solves a multitude of issues, meet weekly. If you're meeting with them, it's really going to help push you to task them, right? If you're meeting with them once a week and you're sitting there on Zoom or Google Meet eye to eye and you haven't given them anything to do, worst case, you can spend that half hour teaching them how to do something, right? It really makes it a lot easier. And so, as far as what this meeting looks like, I suggest you choose a time where you can consistently in your calendar without needing to adjust it, meet with them once a week for a half an hour. And I would suggest doing this for the first 90 days of onboarding. You may choose to continue meeting weekly after that. You may drop down to every 2 weeks or once a month. I generally recommend with every virtual assistant continuing to meet with them at least once a month. Even with my VAs who've been with me 3 years, we consistently meet once a month. It's a great opportunity to hear what they have going on, to hear their ideas, and to really collaborate. But to start off, commit to once a week meetings, and that really helps you hand off tasks. The second big mindset piece I see a lot that I would love for you to not fall into is viewing a virtual assistant as a second class employee. And I think the reason it happens is because in our culture and most cultures, we equate what something costs with what its value is, right? And so if something doesn't cost us much money or it costs less than other options, we think it's less good, right? Like if you buy something at Walmart, is it going to be as good as if you're buying it at like Saks Fifth Avenue? Our mind, like what you're probably thinking automatically is no, right? Something from Walmart is not going to be as good as something from Saks Fifth Avenue because we equate its cost with its value. But the truth is, with virtual assistants, what we're taking advantage of is the difference in cost of living between two different countries. So you cannot compare what you would get for, let's say, $6 to $8 an hour if you're hiring direct, or if you're going to use a service, 11 to $12 an hour. You cannot compare what you're going to get for those prices to what it would cost you in the US because the cost of living there is totally different. So you got to realize that what you're getting in a virtual assistant is somebody who typically has a college degree, somebody who's fluent in English. Even if they have an accent, they typically are fluent in understanding and speaking English. They're experienced in their field, and they're typically an intelligent adult who's capable of learning and growing. They can be a great asset to your team. So that's what I would recommend to really address this delegation detour. The fix is to realize the skill of this virtual assistant, and seeing them as a person and realizing all the experience that they bring to the table helps a lot. So here in this picture, if you've been watching and you've been wondering who this is or what this is, what I've got going on here, I wanted to share. So I actually spent the month of January in the Philippines. My family and I spent a month there. It was amazing. And one of the things we did is we had company party for our virtual staffing company. And so I was able to meet face to face my virtual assistants and the other ones on our team. So this is a picture of me with my property management and executive assistant, VA Noe. And he is the reason that I can work 1 to 5 hours a week in managing my properties and investing business. Like he handles all these other things for me. He's handling those hospitable messages. He's handling adjusting the pricing. He's handling all these things so I don't have to. Okay. So I wanted to show you real life person and how capable they are. Now let's move on to the next piece that's so important, which is determining the role. And the thing with the role and the issue I see happen a lot, the delegation detour, is hiring for the wrong role. And I will be honest, I've done this myself, right? I'm like, okay, I need somebody to help. I'm totally overwhelmed. I really need somebody, and I'm going to want them to do A, B, and C. But then once I get that person on my team and I start to hand off A, B, C, I'm like, you know what? Actually, like A, B, and C are not what I needed help with. Those aren't taking that much of my time versus what I thought they were. And they actually bring me a lot of joy. And I don't really want to hand them off. I really need somebody who's going to help me with like D, E, and F. And that's what I should have hired for. That's a mistake I see happen a lot. Now, there are solutions if you get in that position, but it's better to just avoid it in the first place. So the fix, and it's super simple, is to just track your activities and make a list. So I recommend starting with like a time tracker, and you track what you're doing, how long you're spending doing it. Is it something that you repeat, right? And how often? Is it something I do daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually? And how do you feel about it, right? Does it energize you or does it drain you? Start to track those activities. And again, we're looking at what we're doing, how often we're doing it, how long it takes us, and how it makes us feel. Once you start tracking those activities, you're going to know what the role is that you need filled. You're going to know what tasks you have in your business that someone else can do and that you want someone else to do. And then you pretty much have a lot of your job description right there by just identifying those tasks. You're going to add your ideal hours, some other specifics or requirements you might have, and your job description is really going to come pretty organically once you start tracking your activities and you have a list of activities of what you want them to do. The next delegation detour I see happen here is people make what I call a Frankenstein rule. You stitch together tasks that don't belong together, tasks that require very different skill sets and personalities, and you expect one person to come in, do all of these, and thrive. You know, if I told you that I'm going to ask my CPA to start closing leads for me, I'm going to have my CPA start calling the leads that I have for off-market sales, and they're going to close those leads. You would look at me like I was crazy, right? And yet we do the same thing with a virtual assistant. We expect a virtual assistant to come in and we're going to give them our accounting and bookkeeping. We're going to give them admin work. And then we're also going to expect them to cold call. Like, you wouldn't do that to someone else. You wouldn't give them totally different tasks that would require different skill sets and personalities. And yet we do it with virtual assistants. So what is the fix here? The fix is to build what I would call an aligned role. As you're considering this role and these job descriptions, you want to consider tasks that use similar skill sets and similar personality type. I like to use the DISC personality test a lot in my assessment. Whatever personality test you like to use, you can use here. And I want you to think about, do you want like an outgoing, extroverted, high I type? And this is somebody who's going to be making those cold calls, who's going to be answering the phone, who's going to be doing a lot of interactive work? Or do you want somebody who's like a C calculating computer person who's going to do your bookkeeping and admin work? They're going to be detail oriented. They're going to be great at following directions. You know, we want to group roles that are going to take or group jobs that are going to take that same kind of person. Okay. Now you can group multiple tasks into one role, and a virtual assistant can cover a range of a possible of like responsibilities, but they just can't be complete opposites, right? That's just something to keep in mind. And Thomas, the personality test that I like to use is the DISC assessment, DISC is what I find is a really easy way. It groups people into just 4 different personalities, the D, I, S, and C. Most people have a primary and then a secondary, and it's just a really easy way to think about people. Yeah. Now, we're talking about roles, we're talking about all of this, and I'd love for you to think about what repeat task are you doing that drains your time or energy the most. Okay. As we think about what role and you kind of envision what a virtual assistant could step in and help, if you think about, oh my gosh, what drains my time and energy, I bet something's going to pop straight to mind. While you do that, I want to tell you about Armin here in this picture. So this is my husband with Armin at our holiday party, and Armin is my bookkeeping and accounting VA. He does all the accounting work for my investing business, and he's done this for me for I think 3 years now. He's also created all the procedures and all the systems for all the tasks he does. Your virtual assistant can do that for you. Now, Armin is amazing in accounting, and he's a really nice guy. He's friendly, he's easy to work with, and he's also totally happy working on accounting and spreadsheets and numbers all day long. If I took Armin and I said, hey, Armin, you're also going to do cold calling for me, that would be crazy. He wouldn't be happy. He wouldn't excel in that role. I'd be setting him up to fail because that's not a great fit for him, right? He doesn't want to be making sales calls. He doesn't want to be answering the phone. He doesn't want to be interacting with people all day long. That's not his skill set. That's not using his genius. And that's not something he's going to enjoy. Now, we can combine some things, and Armin can make calls. When I need him to call someone about my account, when it's accounting related, he makes calls for me and it's just fine. So someone can do different things like that within the same scope, and Armin does that really well. Now we've talked about your role and we've given you some great tips about how to determine that role well. The next step would be to hire well, right? And so what I would love is in the chat, when you've hired before, virtual assistant or in person, what made someone a great or a terrible fit? When you've hired before, virtual assistant or not, what made someone a great or a terrible fit? Love to hear those stories as I share some things that really help you hire well. The first delegation detour, and I've got a fun story about this one, guys, is not checking references. Maybe as a real estate investor, you've already learned this lesson and you know that you always need to check references. Maybe not. I will tell you, as somebody who's employed a lot of virtual assistants and had some move on, I have never, my one story, I have one story where somebody's called to check if somebody worked for me. That's it, only once. So the fix to not checking references, I got a couple things for you here, is first to contact the references. That's it. Now, you may find with virtual assistants, especially, that it's a little more difficult to get or to check those references because they're not going to have a US phone number. You can still do it. All right. And so most virtual assistants are going to have prior experience with either a US based company or an Australian company. And so you can ask them for references. You can shoot an email instead of a phone call, and you can set up, a Google Meet or a Zoom or a meeting like that, right? You can also use WhatsApp potentially, depending on what country they're in. And if they use that frequently, I will say WhatsApp is not that prevalent in the Philippines, but that might be an option in some countries. And if the virtual assistant says, I don't really have people that you can contact, I'm not in contact with anybody in my old company, you're going to want to worry a little bit. But what you can also do is be like, somebody who's going to sing your praises, right? If you're talking to a Filipino VA, they're many are Catholic, you can be like, can you please give me somebody maybe from your church, right? Maybe a pastor, somebody you help with in ministry, because a lot of them are in ministry in their church. That might be an option. So they will be able to provide somebody that you can call and say, hey, is this a good person that you would recommend? The second thing you can do is you can just contact the businesses that are listed on their resume. You will find that they said, I worked for Acme Realty Company, and you can Google Acme Realty Company and reach out to them. And you won't always get a response, and yet sometimes you will. And sometimes they'll say, yes, they were great. Sometimes they'll say, hey, yeah, they were okay. But they'll tell you why, what they were good in, what they weren't good in, and then you can be more educated in your decision. And let me tell you a story about when someone else did this and I was the business on the resume. All right. So I had a virtual assistant who was working for my real estate agent business as the director of operations. And to be honest, it was getting a little rocky, right? I was trying to work with her, but it was getting a little rocky with work getting done and expectations being met. And someone sent me an email saying, hey, this person has reached out to be hired on my team. I'm looking to hire them, but I wanted to confirm that what they put about working for you on their resume was correct. And she had put her current employment with me as a prior employment. She had said that she had already left the employment, had a whole reason why, all of this. And so I was able to reach out to this potential new employer and say, nope, nope, that's not really true. And due to the fact that she lied on that resume, he did not hire her. I fired her for that and the fact that overall things were rocky, and she was left unemployed. So this guy saved himself a potentially awful hire because he contacted the businesses on the resume. So please, please, please do that. And then the next delegation detour is believing the resume. Everybody puts their best foot forward. You guys know, you're like, of course, it might not be true. But how do you fix this? What do you do about it? What you do is you include an assessment. So I have a bookkeeping and accounting assessment that I will give to virtual assistants if they're applying for that kind of role. And if you're worried about them using AI or ChatGPT, you can, to answer the questions, you can ask them the questions and do it live in your interview, where they have to just respond to you right then based on what they know. Similarly, this is John here in this picture. John is my video editor and graphic designer. He's amazing. He's been with me for 3 years, and video editing is his passion. It is so cool to see how much he loves it and learns about it in his free time. And with a lot of roles like video editing and graphic design, VAs will often have a portfolio. The thing is, first, you might question if the portfolio is yours. Second, I have found even if the portfolio is theirs, you don't know how long it took them to do that work, right? You don't know if they created that graphic design in 5 minutes or 5 hours, or if they edited that 1 minute reel in 15 minutes or 15 hours. And I have found I've fallen prey to that mistake before and hired somebody and realized they were totally junior. They did not know what they were doing, and they were taking forever to do easy, easy things. That was not John. But I have now learned I don't trust a portfolio, and I include a test of their skills. And there's a couple ways you can do this. You can ask them to do some stuff live in the video call. You can be like, hey, why don't you share your screen, pull up Canva. I'm going to shoot you a graphic, or I'm going to give you some instructions. And I'd love for you to just like play around and show me what you can come up with together right here on this call, right? I'd love to hear your thought process and see how you work. That's one way you could do it. You could also schedule the call for an hour, and a half hour in, you could say, hey, this has gone really well. I want you to do a quick half hour editing session for me. So I'm going to email you a video file. I want you, as a quick little reel, or here's a Google Drive link. You can download it there. And what I'd like you to do is, we blocked off this other half an hour, go edit it, go have fun, and make sure that I have the edited version by the top of the hour, right? At the end of this half hour. And I just want to see, I know it's not going to be perfect. I know it's not going to be beautiful, but I just want to see what you can get done in that half hour, what your work looks like. Okay. So there's a couple different ways right there that you can do the assessment in the interview to know exactly what they truly know how to do. Okay. And now we're going to move on to something else I love, which is the tech stack. And I could talk about tech all day, and I have a lot of tech tools that I can pass along to you. But the real issue and the bigger piece that I see get in people's way is putting themselves as the middleman with the tech instead of, and what the fix is hooking the virtual assistant up with the tech directly. If you're still in the middle of your own systems, if you're forwarding texts, if you're forwarding emails, if you're passing along voicemail transcripts, if everything is still coming through you, you haven't actually delegated, right? You're still caught in the mix. And it is very doable to hook them up directly, but it's something that a lot of people don't think about. So I want to walk through, and we've talked about it a little bit, but I want to walk through some ways to do it. And I'd love for you to think about and pop into the chat, where are you still acting as the middleman in your business systems? As I talk through this, if you're like, oh my gosh, I still forward this email to my assistant every time, or oh my gosh, I have no idea how I would not handle this. And then I'm going to walk through how I do handle it. So, first, we talked about it a little bit. I love Open Phone as a shared phone line. Uh, it's really easy. It's a virtual phone service. You can open it on your computer. You can have the app on your phone. With Open Phone, you can have a property management or leads phone number, and it can go to you and to your virtual assistant. It's really, really easy to do there. Next, a shared email address is another thing that might be a good idea. So when we have something like my hospitable account, right? For those of you who are in the short-term rental space, or even for my long-term rentals, like I mentioned, we get HVAC checks. Well, the email account on my HVAC, like my account, right? My whole information, my contact information with the HVAC company uses this shared email address. And so we use service at our property management company, and that is set up on the back end to go to me and to my property management virtual assistant. So I'm never needing to forward emails to them. I can see, and it's all really transparent. Well, honestly, I'm not spending much time reading them, but they're there if I need them. So the shared email address is a great way to set it up, and you just use all the accounts where there's nothing super sensitive, where they can't go in and like send money. All those accounts are just set up with this shared email address, so they automatically get everything they need. Now, if you do have something where a shared email address won't work, so for me, this is my Intuit account, which has QuickBooks, right? I don't want my personal Intuit account to be on a shared email address because I have my account and login, and my accountant VA has their account and login. And so what I do instead is I have in my Gmail an email forwarding rule set up so that when I get my bills or my statements for my like payments on my QuickBooks account, those automatically get forwarded to my bookkeeping accounting virtual assistant so he can attach that receipt in QuickBooks. He can put it into Google Drive where we save all of our receipts, and I don't have to forward that receipt to him. So I do things like this so that I'm never dealing with low-level admin work and getting him these details. And the last piece of this is you want them to have logins and account access themselves. And some ways that kind of goes hand in hand is, a lot of places have two-factor authentication. That's where that Open Phone shared phone line can come in handy. Now, I'm not saying do this for things that are sensitive, but there are a lot of accounts we have like Kajabi or other things like that, where Airbnb, VRBO, where you want them to be able to log in without you passing along a code. And so you can use that via your open phone shared phone line. And there's really no limit to this, really, unless it's something that's financially sensitive or like they can really get anything. So I wanted to share this is Danica. She's the director of operations for my virtual staffing business. She handles everything for director of operations. She posts the job listings, which means she needs to get into all those job sites, right? She gets the applications. They go direct to her email inbox. She reviews them. She schedules the interviews. So she has her own Google Meet where she can schedule the interviews, make the recordings, get everything she needs. She does the reference checks with her own open phone line. So none of that goes through me or any other person. Danica is empowered with the tech to do her entire job totally herself. And I'm not involved because if I have to pass along a login code or I have to forward her emails, I'm not doing the important work I want to do, or I'm not living the life I want to live, right? That's not me being at my highest and best use. And as much as possible, I want to be out of the day to day, and tech really helps with that when we use it right and you don't put yourself in the middle. I've got a few other things here for you guys. I appreciate you. I think we're going to get to some really good system stuff here that you're going to like. So, and I want you to think about as we start talking about setting up systems, and I'm going to break it down into the onboarding and then the ongoing. I want you to think about if you had a VA who started tomorrow, what's one thing you would want them trained on by week 2? What would you be like, oh my gosh, I could not wait to hand this off? And as you do that, I'm going to talk through some of the issues I see that happen with the systems for onboarding a new VA. The first issue I see happen a lot is having no roadmap. This is a big onboarding mistake. It stresses you out, it stresses the VA out, and it really makes it more difficult to succeed. You don't want to hire a VA and just hope that they figure it out. If there's no plan for what they're going to do, no defined priorities, and here's the thing, no sense of what success looks like. You don't need to have every system. You don't need to have it all, like everything mapped out, but you need something, right? You need an idea of what winning looks like so that you guys have a goal to work toward. And so what I recommend is you just map out the first 90 days. And I'm going to show you specifics of that, but I would say create a 30, 60, 90-day plan. And this is big picture. What do you want your virtual assistant to learn? And where do you want them to be with that at 30, 60, and 90 days after they start on? What outcomes matter in each of these phases? And this is going to give you and your virtual assistant some clarity, a way to measure progress, and a way to just be on the same team. You're not going to have every procedure. You're not going to have every task they're going to do, but you're going to say, hey, if I want you to be my bookkeeper and accountant, well, I want you to, by 30 days, get all of my updated transactions, all my old transactions up to date. By 60 days, I want to make sure that everything's being processed a within a week or within a day or whatever you want. By 90 days, I want you to have 100% accuracy in processing transactions all the time, right? And you can just kind of go through and you're not creating the whole systems, but you're creating just a plan for what does success look like? What are your top priorities? The next issue I see a lot with onboarding is people stress out about waiting until it's perfect. Okay. Like I said, you don't need everything to be perfect. You need a rough plan for the first 30, 60, and 90 days. And then the rest you guys can work on together. So often somebody stalls onboarding because your systems aren't ready yet. You don't have procedures written out yet. You think you need everything documented, every step mapped out. But really, it's just keeping you stuck doing it all yourself. And the truth is that a virtual assistant can help you do all of that. All right. And so the fix for this is you're going to build as you go with tech that helps. You don't want to overthink it. If you're giving them stuff off your plate and it's stuff you're doing on the computer, or right, it's really simple. You're going to go into Zoom or you're going to go into Google Meet, whichever one you have an account on. You're going to share your screen and you're going to record yourself doing a task. You don't need the camera on. You don't need to be camera ready. You're just going to share your screen. You're going to have some sort of microphone on and you're going to say, hey, this is how I do my accounting. I log into QuickBooks. I go through these transactions. I upload the receipts. Here's what these things tend to be categorized as, right? And you're just going to talk through it. Now, your virtual assistant can take that video, They can get the video transcript really easily with AI. Often, depending on your program, like whatever account you have with Zoom or with Google, it might do the transcript automatically. If you're using the free account and it doesn't, there are AI tools that can transcribe that. So your VA can take that video, pop it in the tool, and get the transcript. Then they can go into ChatGPT, drop the transcript in. What I like to do is also drop in a template for a procedure that I have, and the VA can say, "Hey, take what's outlined in this video transcript and write it up in this format of a procedure." Now, you have a first draft of a procedure. The virtual assistant can watch the video, they can fine tune the procedure. I recommend they throw in some screenshots or screen grabs so that they've got some visual guidance. And now the virtual assistant has made you a procedure and they can execute that task every time it needs to get done. It's Zoom or Google Meet plus a transcript plus Chat GPT. And I have a whole procedure and video and for how to do this as well. So that's something I have that we'll talk about again at the end. Yes, Zach's munching out. Scribe does that. There are a lot of different AI tools out there. When I started with VAs, AI was not a thing and it was not this easy. So, guys, it is easier than ever. And there's just the whole world is waiting for you. All right. It's amazing. So, now this picture here, guys, I don't have a specific story about it. It's just my youngest child being adorbs with one of the VAs at our party. So enjoy that, but I don't have any related story for it. And what I wanted to show you guys here is also, this is the format that I like for 30, 60, 90. I do it as a table where I've got the categories on the side and then I have where I want them to be at 30, 60, and 90 days. So there I can see the progression because typically, it's going to be, beginner, intermediate, and by 30 days advanced. And I want to see that progression in things. So if we were to look at like the bottom aspect of this table here, guys, software and tools at 30 days, I want them to start to be familiar with these, right? They're going to be getting to know them. They're going to have an idea, but I'm not expecting them to be experts in it. I'm not expecting them to use it, in any kind of masterful situation at this point. They're going to know them. They're going to be using them. They're probably still going to have questions. By 60 days, I want them to be proficient in terms of the day-to-day with these tools. And then by 90 days, I want them to be like masters in this tool where they can start realizing how we can use this tool better, how we can maybe maximize the use of the tool wherever we can actually improve things. So that's an example of, and there's more rows in this 30, 60, 90, but I wanted to give you an idea. This is how I like to set it up. And you see it isn't all the details, it isn't all the procedures, it's just a roadmap of kind of like the big milestones that we want to be at these 3 points. Zach, do I rely on my VAs to recommend systems, softwares, or communication methods? At this point, I know what I like, so that would be no. That being said, when there are things that I am not an expert in, that's a yes. So, for example, in the past with video editing, right? I showed you guys John, my video editing VA. I have never enjoyed video editing. I have never been good at it. I have always been happy to have a VA do it. And so when there's something like that that's outside of my zone of genius, then yes, I've been like, hey, John, what tool do you recommend using? So we use CapCut Pro as an example of video editing, and that is something that he brought into our world. Similarly, for podcast, we use Riverside FM. That was something that I wanted to use anyway, that I had experience and good things with, but I ran it by him. So I said, "Hey, John, we're going to do podcast. We're going to do a podcast. I want to use Riverside. Can you go ahead and like, here's the account login, like play around, make sure that you like it, make sure it's going to meet your needs as a video editor. And if there's something else that you'd rather I look at, let me know." So when it's something outside of my zone of genius, and it is their zone of genius, I will ask for recommendations. But other than that, when I already know what I want, I use what I want. That's what I'd say. Great question, Zach. Thanks for asking that. Let's talk about setting up systems for ongoing once you've got them up and running. And I would love to hear what systems, if any, do you already have in place for tracking your team tasks or results? I'd love to hear what other people are doing. Maybe there's a better way out there. And for everyone else who's listening or watching as well, what systems do you love to use? So when it comes to ongoing delegation and having someone in there, oh yes, Zach, Google Calendar. I just love all of Google Workspace other than Google Voice. So yeah, Google Calendar rules my world. And yes. Anyway, the biggest delegation detour I see is having no systems and no stability. I see it where people just skip systems altogether. The tasks live in your head, reminders are back and forth in Slack. There's nothing systemic. And the VA is kind of left to guess at what's next. And what happens is things fall through the cracks. And that sucks. I never want something to fall through the cracks. So that's where I have become a huge, huge systems advocate, I would say. And the great thing is your VA can do a lot of the system stuff for you. You need to set up the expectation that it's going to be done, and you need to confirm that it's done, but you don't have to do it yourself. You can oversee it. Amber, thanks for throwing out Monday.com. We're going to talk about that. Dina, I'm not familiar with the Google Content Tracker, so you've given me something new to learn, which I'm excited about. All right, the fix for this detour is that every task, and this is super simple for you guys to remember, just remember every task gets a home and a how-to. That's it. Every task gets a home and a how-to. That's if you delegate a task, the two simple things it needs. The home is your task management system. I love Monday.com, like Amber's shown out there. And this is where the task lives. It's where it gets assigned to your virtual assistant. It's where it gets marked as complete. It's where any notes about the task live. In Monday.com, one of the things I love is it's very easy to set up tasks that recur. So you can have a column and you can set up, hey, this is a task I do weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually, whatever it is. And when you attach that to that task, what's so cool is when it's marked done for this round, it automatically creates a new task for the next time it needs to be done. So for example, I have a task that's called weekly short-term rental tasks. It's a combination of like maybe 5 different things that have to happen once a week for my short-term rentals. It's like checking our cameras to make sure that the trash cans are in the right place, because if you have short-term rentals, sometimes the trash cans walk away or aren't where they're supposed to be. It's checking the battery levels on our digital locks on the short-term rentals, because if the battery dies, no one can get in. So we have these routine things that are done. And so every week, Noe does everything on the weekly tasks. He marks updates on it on its task on Monday. So we know exactly where it is. He marks what the battery levels are. He marks his results for everything, and then he marks it done. And when he does that, we have a done task with all those records. And then we have a new task in the pending group that's set for the due date of next Friday. So that's where having a home with the technology that's there makes things so easy so they don't fall through the cracks. And you know who makes those tasks in Monday? My virtual assistants, right? I train them up first. This is how I do it. This is my system. And then now, if we get a new task that needs to be done, they're setting it all up in Monday. Now, the second piece is the how to. And that is for me, Google Workspace, it's Google Drive. That's the how to is the written procedure. So we talked about how you could make that written procedure. That written procedure then lives in Google Drive. And in Monday.com, that task is linked to Google's procedure. Amber, you gave me another one, Sweet Process. I need to check that out. I love that. I think you mentioned that before. I still need to do that. All right. So Monday.com and Google Workspace are the two backbones of my system in terms of tasking and procedures. They don't need to be the backbones of yours. They do work really well. You may find something else you love. The next delegation detour with ongoing tasks is that business owners think you can set it and forget it. A lot of investors make the mistake of handing something off and never circling back. You don't review the procedure, you don't check the output, you just hope it's done right. And the truth is, you need to inspect what you expect. And this is both a mindset and a systems piece. So one of the things we do really easy in Monday.com is a little thing that's made a big difference is when a task is marked complete, the virtual assistant needs to put in a screenshot as proof. They need to put in a screenshot. This makes it really easy to verify the task is done. It adds a level of accountability where they're not going to mark it as done if they don't have that screenshot. And if I do need to check the task or I want to make sure it was done the way I was expecting, I can just look at the screenshot. I don't have to go hunt down the task or wherever they did it. It's right there. Now, real quick, I want to show you what this looks like. This is my Monday.com board for my property management. You can see the tasks, you can see on the right, the different colors there are the recurring and the links to my procedure. So this is that piece. This is the top part of a procedure. So you can see we're using Google Docs. I like to put tables, but it's nothing super fancy. I have my ways I like the procedures, but they can be whatever you like. And this is an example of a done task on Monday.com. So the virtual assistant said they were done. They gave me some notes, and then there's a screenshot so I can verify that it's done. This is what my system looks like to ensure that everything gets done and nothing falls through the cracks. Now, guys, I do have a little bit more. I know we've gone a little long. You guys have had great questions, and I'd love to dive into it. So if you have the time to stick around with me, we've got a little bit more to go over. And Michelle, to your question, I do not use Hubstaff. I don't feel the need to use that. I know some people like it a lot. You have to be careful if you use Hubstaff that it doesn't seem like your big brother, because what Hubstaff does is it does like track your VA's screens all the time. So if you're using Hubstaff, I would make sure that you say, hey guys, I know you're not going to work 24/7. I know sometimes you need a mental break, and really be clear on the guidance. What I do is we use Google Chat, where they're going to chat beginning of shift, when they go on lunch break, when they come back on lunch break, and when they're done for the day. I get those 4 messages. And then I would expect that if I do send them anything on Google Chat, that I'm going to get a response within 10 minutes. And if those things aren't met, then we're going to talk about if they're working when they're supposed to be working. And that's typically worked fine for me. All right. Now, guys, I want to real quick talk about how can you implement this and how can you be successful doing this? You've seen the system here. You've seen some of my like pro tips. And I want to real quick talk about like, you've seen the mindset, you've seen the systems, you've seen all of this. Bye, Adam. And you have 2 choices. You can go implement this alone. You've got some of the things here. You can take what I taught you today and go figure it out. Or if you want help getting it right the first time, I've created something just for you that I think is going to help by letting you get further faster and giving you the accountability to make sure you execute on it. And I'm very excited to show you guys the VA Launchpad Live. What this is my 8-week done with you version of my online course that walks people through how to bring a VA into their investing business. It isn't theory. I walk you step by step through hiring and onboarding a VA with the tools, support, and templates that I use myself. By the end of this 8-week session, you're going to have a VA hired, onboarded, and already creating leverage in your business. We include live coaching, weekly group coaching calls with me to answer any questions and keep you moving. We include a private community to get real-time feedback and accountability. VA Insights. What was really popular with my last session of this course was to bring in my VAs who help in my business so you can talk to them and hear what it's like from their perspective. And then you're going to get the tools to do it all yourself, the step-by-step hiring system with job descriptions, interview scripts, and SOP templates so you're not starting from scratch. A proven onboarding process. You're going to get my 30, 60, 90 day onboarding plan. You're going to get a template that you can fill out yourself with the exact steps to help you get your VA up and running, and the tech stack set up to help connect your VA to your system so you're not the middleman. All of that is in there, and we do it all in 8 weeks. We're going to start June 15 and we're going to run through August 8. First couple weeks, it's going to be defining your VA role, writing your job description. Then you're going to post the job, you're going to screen the applicants, you're going to conduct interviews, and you're going to make the hire and begin onboarding your virtual assistant. People did it in the last course session, and I know you can do it in this course session as well. And then in the last couple of weeks, you're going to start training and delegating tasks so that your VA is running your key systems and you're going to start getting that leverage. So together in just 8 weeks, we can take you from no VA to a VA operating in your business. It's really cool. It makes a huge difference, and I love helping people do it. So what is the investment here? It's $997 for full access to the 8-week live program, all the tools, all the coaching, and you continue to have a reference and access to this going forward after that. Now, to make your decision easier, I've also put a couple early enrollment bonuses if you enroll by midnight tonight. The first is that bookkeeping assessment tool that I talked about that's going to help you hire your first or your next bookkeeping VA so that you can really make sure they know their stuff in the interview. And the second thing is my procedure builder tutorial. So this is a video and guide on how to turn a screen recording that you make into a full procedure using ChatGPT. So you can even just give this straight to the VA when they start, and then you can just be making videos and they can use this procedure to start writing the procedures from the videos that you make. Now, reminder, those early enrollment bonuses are by midnight tonight. I'm going to see who registers by then, and I'm going to shoot them over those bonuses. And that's what it is. So if you guys want some help, if you want some support in doing this yourself, I'm excited to have you in the next course. And if you guys have any questions, right, that's what this time is for as well. If you're not sure if this would work in your business, if you're wondering how much time it really will take, or if you're curious about how this will fit your investment strategy. And Noe, if we can go ahead and get the registration link in the chat for people who are ready to go. Otherwise, I'd love to talk through what comments you might have or what questions you would have. Great question, Thomas. I will say that I self-manage all my properties except for one with this, and I think it does. Now, with property management, the other piece you'll need is if you are remote from your properties, the leasing part. That's the only other piece that I find you need other than a handyman or a contractor is you need a real estate agent who's willing to show your properties for you to get them leased out. So it can be done, and I do have instructions, or I have a podcast actually about how you can self-manage using a VA. So I could shoot that to you if you wanted, Thomas. Amanda, yes, we're going to send the recording out. It takes a little bit for it to process after the call in Zoom. So it won't be immediate, but we will get it out within 24 hours. All right. And Thomas, I'll make a note and I'll get that podcast over to you later for sure. Well, that's one of the big things about it is so many people, and if you're a property manager on this call, like some property managers are great. And yet I would say 9 out of 10 times I hear real estate investors say that they have to manage the property manager, right? And they're paying to that property manager, and then they have to spend time on it anyway. And I will say that by using a virtual assistant, and part of it is I like to be in control. I like to do things my way. By using a virtual assistant, I've been able to self-manage for the most part. Yeah. And yes, I get it, Amanda. You can feel overwhelmed. That's why I like doing the course, because the course we walk through step by step. Now, Thomas, if you take this course, what you're going to do with the course, what most people do is they hire direct. So you're going to go on to, I typically recommend onlinejobs.ph, and you're going to hire direct. And that I recommend right now is in the $6 to $8 an hour for hiring direct. If you want to go with like my full service VA agency, what we charge there is a flat monthly fee of $1,979 for a full-time virtual assistant. It covers everything. It's a monthly fee, and that breaks down to about $11 and change an hour. So that shows you the difference, and it's right for different people. So that's something we talk about in the course too, is which choice is the right for you, because there's 3 different options for hiring VAs, and they're all just a measure of if you have more time or if you have more money, right? If you're willing to spend more time and spend less money, hire direct. If you're willing to spend more money and take less time, then you use a managed VA agency. Dina, thank you for coming. And I'm sorry to hear you have to manage your property managers. I feel you on that. If you want to self-manage and use a VA, we can make that happen. Let me stop sharing. I realized I'm still screen sharing. But yeah, guys, I know you're here. I know you might have some questions. Feel free to come off mute and as well if you want. Any questions you've got about VAs at all? Let's talk about them. All right. I'm going to be honest. So Thomas, the recommended hours to hire for, it would depend. Are yours all long-term rentals? And are you doing any other like social media or anything else extra for them? If you were doing all long-term rentals, you could get by with less hours. I mean, you could probably do 5 to 10 hours a week. But here's the thing. Once you start using a virtual assistant, you realize how much they can do for you. And they can be your personal assistant. They can do all these other things for you. So, where you might be able to get by with 5 to 10 hours, you can also give them a whole lot of other stuff off your plate. Whatever you want to do, whatever your busy work is, they can do it for you. And you might find that it becomes more and more. But you can hire part-time, you can hire full-time. There's some people who only want to work part-time. Um, Now, if you had 20 properties and you were doing flips with all of those, you would need somebody probably full time because with flips, I'm thinking there's a lot more active management, turning utilities on and off. The other thing is there's a lot more transactions that you're going to have with flips, buying supplies, paying contractors, managing all of that. So that'd be a lot more. But 20 long-term rentals, probably 5 to 10 hours a week. And like I said, they could probably do some other stuff for you too. Good question. I'm here for you guys. This is your time. If you're here, what questions do you want to ask? What do you want to talk through?
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay. So I do have a VA right now, and my biggest obstacle with this is my cleaner sends me invoices via text. Um, and right now we're just using, SMS messaging. Is open phone the right way to be able to get my VA and my cleaner to communicate so that I'm not in the middle of all of that?
Yes. So when we made this switch, we sent, like, if you got a new phone number, we sent all of those contacts and that new number. Hey, for property management, I'm trying to separate that. And like the message was effectively, hey, I'm trying to separate my property management from my personal messages. Here's my new number for all of our conversations, right? And then I will have the VA text them from the new number as well. I'll be like, hey, here's the new number, save it here. And you transfer them all over there. But anything like that, any kind of, yes, image, video, anything like that, I have found works fine in open phone.
Yeah. And that's something my husband, myself, and our VA and our handyman cleaners, we can all share, like communicate through there easily.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. I will look into
It's
that then.
amazing. Yes. Um, Brent Brent and Shiloh, how does the time difference work for you? I assume you mean like because the virtual assistant is in a different time zone. So typically VAs, at least in the Philippines, which is where I work with pretty much, they're used to working the graveyard shift. So many industries from the US are sourcing from the Philippines. So, like my virtual assistant, Noe, before he worked for me, he worked in the BPO industry, which I never remember what BPO stands for, but it was like a call center. And so he was working in a call center and he was working the night shift there. So he's totally used to working the night shift. Um, I've heard from our other VAs, like the video editor, John, he has a daughter, and he, like many VAs who have families, they like that they are working when the kids are asleep, right? They work when the kids are asleep. They get off their shift when the kids wake up in the morning. They get the kids ready to school. Kids go to school. They sleep during the day. They wake up. They're with the kids after school in the afternoon. Kids go to bed. They start their shift. So it's not uncommon. It's pretty common in the Philippines. So the world kind of works around it. I will tell you right now it's 3:10 a.m. for me here in Tokyo, and you get used to it. I do get tired. I do sleep in. But you make it work if you make it work. But I guess the other part of that is I should say, to be really clear, my properties, my short-term rentals at least, are East Coast time. And so my property management VA works 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time, with an hour lunch break. Monday through Friday. You can set your VA's hours to whatever you want, though. So if you want them to work different hours, that's fine. You can have them do whatever you wanted, typically. And I'd put that in the job description so you get somebody who wants and can work with those hours. It's good to know that up front. Anytime.
So
Guys, I can talk about VAs all day. Go ahead.
yeah, For
Yeah.
somebody that doesn't have any systems, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time and I just do everything and usually not very correctly, but I just keep going and I do it. And so like how do you bring in assistance when you don't know really what it is you do because I just do what's in front of me at the time? Does that make sense? Like
Right.
I need to create the systems and I don't know really where to start with that. So I've been diving into a bunch of AI stuff to try and create that path.
What I'm curious, what is a lot of like if I was to just kind of be like, what do you do for your real estate investing? Like what are like the top five things that you would say?
Well, I mean, what are the top things that I do? I mean, I manage people. I mean, I actually think long-term rentals are a liability and it's the person that's in the property that pays me, that's the asset. So I manage that
Okay.
asset, I manage the people. That probably eats up the most time. And my
Okay.
and I've been to a point where I'm ready to sell a bunch of stuff and then try to regroup, but I'd also like thinking that I just pretend to sell it, change the name of it, switch it over so it's completely virtual and kind of bring assistance in that way where I can kind of remove myself.
Hmm. All right. Well, so
That's a
if
lot, I
you want,
know.
yeah, like so if we were to say to, get the first part of your answer, if you manage people, I would say you can just start with writing, I mean, like I said, just making a list of what you're doing, right? Just making a list like that time tracker of what you're doing, how long it takes you to do it. That's what I started with. I started in like my real estate agent business with, okay, what would I even want a virtual assistant to do? And I was like, well, contract to close, which is from, when we go under contract, when we close on a property, that process would be great because like it's a bunch of admin work and it's typically the same, right? Like, and so I just started with like a sheet of writing down what every step in the process was, like like a spreadsheet. And so I just started writing it down, and it wasn't like I wrote down everything, it was just the name of what the step was, right? Like I create a bound contract, I email that contract to the client, the lender, and the title company, right? Like just starting to list what you do, and then from there that's going to, I think, lead to a lot of realizations or information about who to hire and how many hours and what you want them to be good at.
Okay. All right, thanks.
How else can I help you guys? We don't have any other questions in the next minute or so. I'll go ahead and wrap up. And we'll send a follow-up email as well if you're thinking about that course and you want to register later, or if there's other ways that I can help you or anything like that. I'd love to hear from you, love to connect with other investors, hear what you guys are doing, share best practices, and see how we can help each other. All right?
I have one more question.
Yeah, shoot.
Okay. So how do you handle, especially so our VA is in the Philippines
Mhm.
and she's just, I know this is the culture. She is so afraid of making a mistake. How do you work with them when they do make a mistake to help kind of retrain what they're doing wrong without them feeling horrible about it? Because like I have a task she's not doing right, but there was something that went wrong in a different part that was not her fault. And so she's now like super terrified of making any mistakes. And how do you work with that culture? Because I know that's just, you know,
Right,
the type of people they are.
right. So one of my go-tos, and I know not every manager loves this, but I really like it with Filipino VAs especially, is like the positive sandwich, right? And I'm gonna do that with everything. I'm gonna have a positive comment about what they're doing well, or just, hey, thank you for doing this so fast, or amazing work, or something like that, then I'm going to give that constructive feedback of, we need to change how we do this, right? Then I'm going to end with like, I know you're going to make it look great, or some other kind of positive thing at the end. That has worked really, really well for me. And it also like, it's not just like a tool. It also helps me appreciate what they are doing well, right? It helps
Right. Yeah.
me have that like the, not to say attitude of gratitude, but be grateful, like, hey, they got this done and it's like 80% correct. That's awesome, right? And then, hey, we
Right.
just need to tweak this and maybe give some specifics, or even say, like, if I have specifics, like graphics, right? Sometimes I can be like, I really just want this color changed, or I really think, like, can we play around with these colors? So it's a collaborative thing of, hey, let's try to figure it out. Sometimes I'm like, I have no idea what would make this better. I just know this is not right. Sorry, I can't be of more help, right? Um, but I just know that this part doesn't work. I'll be like, hopefully you can come up with something better. If there's something else I can do to help along that process, let me know. But that positive sandwich helps a lot with it. And just approaching from a over time, I think it helps too. When they realize that they could make a mistake and you're not going to be like, that
Right.
sigh that we all have heard from our parents that just makes us
Yeah.
feel like a failure, you know? So,
Right. And I think this is the first thing that, like, the first issue that we had was not her fault. And so I kept trying to, this wasn't your fault. Something changed in the system, and the procedure I gave you that you followed no longer works. Like, it's not a you problem. But now there's
mhm,
something else, and she's like so afraid to make any mistake. She's like, I don't want to touch it because I'm afraid of breaking it. And I'm trying
mhm,
to be super positive with her, but that's why I'm like, am I just not saying it right to her to try, or is it just gonna take a little bit more trust between both of us
right.
to know that I'm not gonna get upset?
Eh, and sometimes it is a hiring thing where some VAs, and it's like a personality thing, are so afraid, especially like on the disc, if they're like a high S, because the S is so relational, like relationship based. So if they're a high S, it can be a bigger deal. And so I would almost say to them, I would rather you make a mistake than not do it. That's something else I
Okay.
would throw out, Michelle, is be like, the worst thing is not doing it at all. I would rather you do it and make a mistake than not do it at all. And like make that clear that what is really the biggest sin there in effect.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Um, That's it. And I know, like, relationship is very high on her priority. So meeting weekly with her is really important. Even if we don't have anything
Mhm.
to say, she just wants to see our faces and just to
Yeah.
say hi. So I know that's a really high, important thing in her life. So
Mhm. That's great to hear. And I appreciate you sharing that with everyone else. Yeah,
thanks.
I got
really good
one
point.
question for you.
Yeah, I'm here.
So obviously, I know you're using your VAs for managing your current existing portfolio. Are you using them for acquisition purposes as well to add to the portfolio, or are you mostly like stagnant on that side?
So, good question. I was looking at buying more properties this year, but honestly, when I ran the numbers, like for me, I do private money lending and it made more sense to scale up my private money lending rather than buy more properties. But that being said, you can definitely use VAs for the acquisition piece. I would say typically investors have their own system for how they like to underwrite properties. And so that system, because it's probably on the computer, is something that they could do. You can share and say, hey, this is where I like to pull data, whatever you're using, prop stream or anything like that, they can have that login, they can go through it. Now, I will say you're probably not going to have your VA make like that final red light, green light, but they can pull a lot of the data, if we're talking about underwriting, into those spreadsheets or do that kind of work for you. It can take a little creativity, but it is possible. So to like give you a specific example, at least on my real estate team, we would run when I had my real estate team, we were primarily with investors, and we would put together a spreadsheet of potential investment properties every week. And so I would have a system where we would pull the new listings from the MLS. We would run them through some criteria. I would have the VA like go to 3 different sites for rent estimates, right? They would put in those 3 sites, they'd put that into the spreadsheet. And so they can do your system of like pulling data and putting it in one place for it to be easier for you to evaluate. They can also reach out to like potential like if you were going to use something like open phone, you could have them doing outreach to whoever you're trying to get properties from, right? They could be doing that outreach so you don't have to. Someone else I know, a flipper who uses their VA for acquisitions, they do there's a lot of those Facebook groups where deals come. Your virtual assistant can have a Facebook page and you can add them to these groups and they can post there about wanting deals. They can reply to posts about deals. They can even just tag you to see it. So then you can decide the next level. But they can be in those places and help you source deals that way as well.
Awesome. Yeah, actually, I do a lot of those things currently. Give my VA like access to the MLS to, put comms together and things like that. But I'm curious, so your portfolio that you've built, what city in the US is that?
Sure. So the properties that I own directly are my short-term rentals are in Myrtle Beach and my long-term rentals are in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Gotcha. I just happen to live in the most competitive market, Southern California, so it's a little challenging to get rentals here. So I'm looking to build like rentals on the Midwest and stuff, but
Yeah.
flipping and wholesaling is my main approach here. So
Okay.
kind of pivot
Um, you,
to the best approach.
Yeah, I'm a California native and I
Hmm.
helped a lot of Californians invest in Chattanooga real estate when I was an active agent there.
Well, it sounds like that might be the place to be looking too. And are they mostly
Yeah.
all short-term rentals, everything you have?
Um, for me, or are you saying the Chattanooga market specifically?
Just for you and I guess the
Uh,
investors that were buying, were they doing similar approaches or are they doing
right.
long?
So in Chattanooga, long-term rentals do well. You can do typically single family, and they also have a respectable amount of small multifamily. Larger multifamily, there's not a ton, but you do come across them occasionally. There is there was at least, before I sold, I sold my team in into 2023. There was a lot of short-term rental possibility outside of Chattanooga, like because city of Chattanooga was a little iffy with their regulations, but there are some beautiful areas. Now, I'd say nationwide short-term rentals are really tough to make the numbers work on purchases right now. Um, but I see people still buying in Chattanooga with long-term rentals. And we can follow up later if you'd like. I can do an introduction to some agents in Chattanooga who work with
Yeah,
investors and are investors.
great. I'm working with an investor that's built up like a 30 unit portfolio in Memphis, so that's where I've been looking
Mm.
mostly. But given the state of the market, it's a lot of numbers just don't make sense. So trying to pivot to
It's
focus
tough.
on wholesaling and flipping in California. So
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, it's really tough right now with and rates like to stay where they are.
yeah,
Yep.
no kidding. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Jason. All right. Any other questions, guys? I've loved this. Any chance to talk about real estate investing in VAs is my thing. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and let you guys go. Like I said, you'll get a follow-up email. I'd love to stay in contact. And if there's anything I can do to help you, just let me know. Okay? Bye, guys.